Right, we're in live.
There we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Gumtree of Liberty podcast. Brought to you by myself, LibertyDownUnder. We've got Gerrie, Quokka, and Jack. And guesting, we've got CD and Harry Chris of the Libertarian from America to ask us some questions about the situation in Australia. So, do you have any questions that we get to first before we look at the chat?
So,
I will,
yeah. Oh. I'll go ahead and go first. I'll jump in on this. So this app that they're talking about with the facial recognition and all that, is that a thing that's been developed already and they're going to implement it? Or is this something that's just sort of like, we would like to do something like this?
I think they are doing it. I don't know if it's been brought in yet, though. I don't know if anyone else says anything about it.
It's implemented in South Australia.
Yeah.
As far as we're aware, South Australia is the only one that's actually doing it. But I posted a thing on Twitter the other day about how the social credit system was being tested in Darwin. So I imagine that this is some kind of culmination of that. So they've started developing Darwin as a smart city, which is just they've bought the social credit system from their sister city, which is in China, in the Heian province, I believe. Something like that. Don't quote me on that one, but it's somewhere in China they have a sister city, and apparently they've bought this program from them and have started implementing it. You can assume what they really want to use it for, considering Darwin does have a massive Aboriginal population. There's very much a possibility that probably does come into it. But again, I more assume that they're testing it on a smaller city, preparing it for the bigger cities. And this is, I think this is basically what's going to be a culmination of the vaccine passport thing. So they already do this sort of stuff, the geolocation thing with in-car breath testers for people who have been caught drink driving. Is they take a photo, they send a signal, and you have to blow into the device and it takes a photo to make sure that it's actually you doing it. So it's been implemented in different ways before, but this is the first time the government, I think, has mandated it for people who haven't committed a crime, which is the more concerning part.
So it's being brought in for everyone who's in quarantine right now. So if you're meant to be in isolation, you've got to send them a photo basically of where you are. If they text you and you've got 15 minutes, if you don't send them a photo, they'll come around to you and go door knocking. So we've seen in Sydney already, the police will go door knocking. There was one story a couple of weeks back where a guy went for a drive to get some fresh air. The police were doing the rounds. He wasn't at home. They waited for him to get home, and then they gave him a fine. So it's going to be the exact same thing, except sort of the police walking around, because South Australia is so large, and basically every state is really large here and rural. They're going to instead get them to send in these photos. That way, it saves the police having to do the rounds with limited manpower.
Wow. So what was the fine for?
So
what the fine's for?
Yeah, what was the fine for that he got?
But he had the fine for leaving quarantine.
It was breaching COVID restrictions, right?
No, yeah, it was breaching the stay-at-home order. That's right. Yeah,
that's right.
Does Australia have sort of a Bill of Rights that guarantees privacy?
No.
Everything is implied. Every freedom we have is implied.
Okay.
So we have 5 rights from our constitution. They are the right to vote, the right to trial by jury, freedom of religion, prohibition against being discriminated against on the basis of the state that you live in, and the prohibition against the acquisition of property on unjust and unfair terms. I think they're the only 5 in the Constitution. So like nothing like the American Bill of Rights.
Okay. Wow.
But isn't it still liberty? Sorry, I was just going to add. There's that court case. Was it in 64 or 46? I'm not sure. Where they then that sort of gave us the implied right to have freedom of speech, which was sort of equal. I forget the name of the court case, but that's
we do. Yes, we have the common law right to free speech, but because it's common law, not statutory law, so it hasn't been passed by Parliament. If they pass any other laws, it's overridden. So, for example, Victoria and Queensland have Bill of Rights that they have passed at a state level. That includes the freedom of speech, but at the federal level, not so much. So anything that happens there that's like anti-discrimination. So we also have the anti-discrimination law, Racial Discrimination Act 1975, which outlaws, under Section 18C, outlaws all speech that could hurt someone's feelings or be seen as racist. And because that's statute, it overrules the common law right to free speech.
Okay, so I have a thing here. It says the Australian High Court confirms no personal right to free speech. In some cases, it says the High Court of Australia handed down its decision in Comcare versus Banerjee, something like that. It was in 2019, confirming that the implied freedom of political communication was justifiably restricted by the Australian Public Service Code of Conduct and related legislation. So basically, we don't have free speech. That's as far as it goes. There's nothing else to say. Like, I mean, the press conference. Gone.
As I was going to say, our problem is now they are ruling by decree, and I don't know the Aussies on this call whether you're aware that yesterday they signed off by ministerial decree an amendment to the Biosecurity Act. I haven't read it yet because the site is down, the Parliament House website is down, but I was told that it's, instead of now us having rights as an individual, that now we're going to be put into a class. So anyone who refuses the vaccine, for example, will be put into a class. I know, really scary. And as I said, the site is down, so I haven't been able to get into the link and read the legislation. I can see the look on your face, hairy-chested libertarian. I know, it's just, it's hideous. We are really a country in distress right now. It is quite hideous.
And so, I'm sure that this can't be popular with everybody there. Is there a sense?
Oh, it is. It is. It's overwhelming support.
Wow. Okay.
So you'll have people on Twitter who are literally replying to tweets by the Queensland, Victorian, and New South Wales police, reporting on their neighbours and dobbing them in basically, and saying, and the people are asking Gladys Berejiklian in the Premier of New South Wales, she should have locked down harder and faster. So there's currently a stay-at-home order, and the entire state's in lockdown, but she should have gone harder and faster. That's the point we're at.
And just out of curiosity,
I mean, a lot of those accounts aren't real.
Yes, some of them aren't, but
there's a lot of
they've got
fake accounts.
The big one out there right now is a guy called PR guy from Victoria. He's got around 30,000 followers, and he was calling.
I fucking hate that guy.
So he was saying basically, do your duty, report a traitor. If you go to the protests, you're anti-lockdown, you're pro-COVID.
But it's not even the people on Twitter. The New South Wales Health Minister, Brad Hazzard, he actually stood at a press conference a week or two ago and told the entire state and the country, make sure you tell on your neighbours. But essentially, he wanted this. I mean, these people are so out of control. I'm even doubting whether it's real half the time. It is so absurd. I mean, it is as absurd as some of the stuff Joe Biden's coming out with.
Oh.
It really is mind blowing.
Yeah, I'm gonna put in the private chat a couple of his tweets. Okay.
And I mean, Joe Biden has the benefit of needing to wear diapers, probably. It sounds like y'all minister is a little bit younger and maybe more in set with their faculties. Wow, I didn't know it was that bad. I mean, one of the things I'd heard that gave me some hope was the place that had been burned down with graffiti on it. And I thought, well, maybe there's, some sort of an uprising, but it sounds like it might be the movement of a small a small group.
It is
The
only-
last
it's-
one,
it's-
the
it
last
is
one
very
there
small
is the
here,
trader
yeah.
one.
So we're at the point right now where they've just passed the Identify and Disrupt bill to amend legislation. The big one was amending the Surveillance Devices Act 2004, and basically it will allow the police to get a warrant from a court and then go hack into your device and edit your data or delete it or copy it. Basically, the FISA courts. So it's a very low standard to get that warrant. So
Okay.
a lot of stories have been going out on Twitter and around the and a lot of American news stations have been reporting that there is no warrant. You do need a warrant, but it's because it's only given by like a magistrate. It's a very low standard, and again with the FISA courts, even though there was a warrant there, it was almost always granted.
Wow. That is insane. So what does that mean
Well,
for people who love liberty? Like, are you, you know, can you, I'm not saying that you can leave
Means
because
we're
if you
fucked.
want to, but it sounds like you wouldn't even be allowed to, even if you wanted to.
Oh, we're the first ones on the list. I don't think you realize that.
I believe that we can, that they won't let us come back. Now, I was at a meeting yesterday with a whole group of very liberty-minded people there. It's a grassroots organisation that is wanting to spread across the country to actually teach Australians about why they need to pay attention to their government. It's non-partisan. It's literally about liberty and freedom and versus tyranny. That's what this is. But they were saying that they had an experience that someone they knew wanted to leave, and they were made to sign something to say essentially they cannot return to Australia until the pandemic is over, which of course we know it won't be. It's endless. So, and then sadly, a couple of people I knew were actually talking about moving to Mexico, and and they've got young families, and I was really shocked that at the level of concern among even those of us who think clearly, and these are, families who are willing to take their kids out, and so it was pretty horrifying. It's scary. I'll be honest. I am very concerned. I mean, my son lives in America, in Los Angeles, but he's not a resident. He's there for work. But honestly, if we could move our family, we'd be coming over to you guys. If I could, I would. I don't know how to though.
Well, and that's sad that you're looking at California as the
No.
respite.
No, I wouldn't look.
Not California.
My son lives there. I wouldn't want to go there. I'd be picking your most freedom-loving states.
Come
Northern
on,
Probably
California isn't too bad.
Florida and Texas, probably.
come on to Texas. We'll take it.
Yeah, that would probably be on the top of my list.
Yeah, go to Texas.
Don't know how we get there.
Anywhere but Cali.
Come into DFW.
And New York. Don't go to New York either. Avoid
That's
that one.
You want to avoid the
New
entire
York is-
Northeast, really.
But yeah, like even then, like borders are closed till 2024. Will be when they should fully reopen will be 2024. We don't know the timeline for that. That was a statement from April by the Prime Minister. And you can't escape by sea really because the Royal Australian Navy is patrolling at all times. Yeah, looking for illegal immigrants coming by boat to Australia. So we can't get out, and of course we have no land borders to cross. So we're basically stuck in Prison Island, as we like to call it.
And New South Wales is maximum security.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't want to keep hogging the questions, but if no one else is going to ask, I'm always very curious as to how things got this way. End of the movie. How did we get here? In America, I was very surprised by a lot of the states, how hard they went to tyranny, how quickly. Like I could not have looked at a place like Kansas and said, oh yeah, they had that coming a long time. Kansas is a Midwestern state, pretty free. Was this something that surprised you guys that they went this hard, this fast, or was this something you could see coming down the pike? Is this tyranny out of what's the word? Opportunity?
No.
Apathy. I'd say apathy myself.
Yeah.
I'm just so, I'm a Roman historian and I studied politics as well, but it was mostly political history. So I've tied it to now. I honestly believe it was apathy because we've been so asleep, enjoying all the bells and whistles of life. Australia, the lucky country. It's been going on for decades. And I guess a lot of us, we were busy raising our family. I have our eldest daughter has autism, so my focus was was somewhere else. That's how they do it. That's how they set it up. I believe but it's definitely been going on for decades. That's my opinion.
And the biggest problem we have as well is having mandatory voting. So even if we
Yes.
we wake some people up and people start voting in a more liberty-minded way, the masses are still made to vote, and they always vote for the two major parties.
It also doesn't matter because it's ranked choice, so it doesn't matter where you put them. The major parties are always going to get the votes. Not to mention the bill that just changed, which basically slaughters all small parties. So
they just passed a parliamentary rights bill, and basically what that did is it said that if you're to minor parties to register federally to run in the federal elections, which are going to be early next year, you did need 500 paying members. It's now 1,500 paying members, and it's a lot tighter laws on what name you can call yourselves. So we currently have the Liberal Party, who's in a coalition with the National Party to form the LNP government federally. Then we have the Liberal Democrats, who are classical liberals, and then we have the New Liberals, who are progressive. So we've got lots of minor parties who've got similar names, so that part does make some sense, but like other things like changing the number of members you need and that sorts of laws are ridiculous. They passed 3 bills. I think one senator opposed all 3 of 76 senators. 2 people from the lower house of 150 voted against it. And then the 9 Green senators, I think there's 9, voted against one bill in the Senate. But so that's basically 3 people. And I say all are some form of populist. The senator definitely is Jackie Lambie. She's definitely populist. And then the two MPs have been more liberty-minded in the past. One of them is currently has submitted a private bill to prevent vaccine mandates, but it's not going to get any traction because no one else there thinks like him. But we've had when we have MPs, speak out in Parliament, they'll be condemned by both sides for what they do.
But yeah, so it was definitely a long time coming. There's been a massive effort to socially engineer Australians to be, I guess, complicit. There's lots of think like Pledge of Allegiance, just not as overt. It's very it's subversive the way that they do it. There's a lot of the police are good guys. They're always on your side sort of talk during sort of early schooling. Moving on to into high school, the same sort of thing happens, but there's in my high school there was a police liaison at the school, which you could go in and do basically cadet stuff with the cop. So this sort of thing was very prominent. I'm pretty sure most schools had that, at least in Victoria. And it's very much like people. The other thing is people don't understand in this country. I find that they don't, whether it's from apathy or lack of understanding, I'm not quite sure, but they seem to not care about what happens unless it directly affects them.
Yes.
So
100%.
Yeah.
And this is a massive issue, and it's an issue because we have this tall poppy syndrome here, where nobody wants to speak up. And this is why I think that the protests are good, because they're not working, right? The protests, they're not working. But every single time a protest happens, more people get involved because they see that there are people speaking up. So every single time, the media likes to say that the protests haven't been getting bigger. They have. They really have. The last one was probably nearing 10,000 people. There was a lot of people in Melbourne. So, and keep in mind, when you saw those videos of the police shooting people with rubber bullets, none of these people have weapons. The most dangerous thing they have is a flare. And the police are hitting them with tear gas and rubber bullets. Like the video is very clear. They're not doing anything when they started shooting them. There was just one dude that went past the line of protesters and he got basically just peppered with rubber bullets, right? This is unprecedented in Australia, and still nobody cares. We've been seeing this, and because I've been studying journalism for the last 4 years, I've been watching this sort of stuff, and freedom of the press in Australia doesn't exist. It just doesn't, because I can't, as an independent journalist, go and cover anything outside of my 5 kilometer zone because I need a work permit. So, and because I'm not associated with, well, I am now, but I don't think that they give me one. But because I'm not associated with a big news media outlet, I can't go and cover it because I can't get a work permit. I tried to do some journalism work while I was at uni, and my uni wouldn't even sign a work permit for me. Right? They're telling me to do this work. It's my last year, and they're trying to tell me that I can't do my journalism work, which I want to do in person because it's better. Right? I can't go and do it because they can't or won't give me a work permit. Now that seems a bit ridiculous.
Okay, pardon my ignorance.
Yeah.
Meaning you would have to get permission to do journalism?
Yes. And during the bigger lockdowns last year. It's
not funny.
Oh no, it's hilarious. It's hilarious because it's funny to me because I've seen this coming for years. I saw this coming years ago. So I find that this whole thing. So during the bigger lockdown, the police had the power to tell any journalist to basically provide their police approved media pass. Police approved. So this is absurd, and this is the reason. And the real problem is that these media passes that were given by the police, who do you think they were given to?
Probably the friendly ones.
Nation media.
The friendly ones, right?
Yeah.
So the ones who weren't going to actually report it. You know, these journalists were getting kicked around behind the scenes, and they still said nothing. So that's what I don't understand. So who's the bigger one pulling strings? That's what I want to know. If you ask Kevin Rudd, he'll probably be like, "Oh, Murdoch's doing it," but it's not. It's all of them.
Is Murdoch the prime minister?
No, he's
that's Rupert Murdoch,
media,
the guy
Rupert
who owns
Murdoch.
the news here.
Oh,
he owns Fox.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not just that. It's all of them. Literally all of them.
So okay, with no enumerated Bill of Rights, with no specific, like we have 10 things, this is it, letter of the law. I mean, they interpret it however they want, but in theory, we have this list of 10 things that we're supposed to be guaranteed as humans born in America.
Well,
okay,
they're
do you
negative
think
rights.
because you don't have that, right? So because you don't have that, it's easier for people to become apathetic to the entire system because they don't even know what they have to protect or not to protect, right? Because you have to have a police permit for journalism, and you have to have a government permit to work, and you have to, what's the point if you go against the system? What is it that you get?
That's exactly
that make
right.
sense?
So they've made it.
Why would someone?
Hard, yeah. They've made it hard enough the people will just listen, because it's very comfortable here. It's very, very comfortable.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Right? There's nothing you really have to worry about. Life is very easy.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'll call that out.
I think a
Don't
lot
live
of
in Australia. Everything kills you there.
yes.
Swim in the water. You guys got shark plants snap up and eat you.
Jellyfish.
I've seen the videos with the spiders, like the giant.
Koalas, sharks.
Yeah.
Drop bears.
The drop bears, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
drop
think
bears,
it's
whatever that
very-
is. Nope.
What is the Australian view of something like an American idea that because you are human, there are certain inalienable rights given to you by God, like what, or it wouldn't necessarily have to be God, but meaning something that supersedes a human organization like government. Would it? They just is that seen
Well,
as
people don't really think about it in here.
Are you talking in
Australia.
general, or are you talking like the general view of it?
your pop culture people that
Okay,
you know?
it doesn't exist. That idea
Okay.
doesn't exist.
Okay.
In Australian,
Yeah, it doesn't.
in Australian media, that sort of stuff that doesn't exist.
Or at least
If you
negative
were
or
to-
negative rights.
Yeah, if you were to go on the street and ask someone whether they knew what an inherent right was, they would say something like healthcare. They wouldn't say
Yeah.
self-defense.
So, something like
They
that.
would say, yeah, it's yeah. The idea of negative and positive rights is completely lost on everyone that doesn't understand that sort of, because it is quite a deep political idea. This and it's very much on the liberty spectrum, verging on that sort of anarchist side, where this idea that inherently you have a right as a human being to survive and do anything that you require to get there. So this idea of self-defense, we don't have self-defense here. If someone broke into my house, I'd have to leave.
It's virtually illegal. It's virtually
No, no,
illegal.
So there was a
Now, if they break in, you can defend your property. The problem is you don't have much that you can use to defend it. So you do.
With what, a
if
butter
someone
knife?
breaks-
no. You'd probably get put in jail with a butter knife.
So no, you can if someone breaks into your property, so they trespass on your property, you can fight back, provided that is proportionate and necessary.
Proportionate. That's
Proportionate and necessary. That sounds like a trap for a courtroom.
that's exactly what that is.
I think Jack hit on something before, which personally, it's hard. We shouldn't generalize, but in a way, there isn't anything else. Remember, I've always believed that our problem in Australia is we haven't had to fight for our independence. You guys have that. You have that rich history of fighting, defending. It's ingrained in your, it was in your education system. I don't know what's up to now. We had it. We were just, clearly the Indigenous population, they were here. It was their land. We were put here. We were dropped here. There is debate around that whole thing, but push that to the side. That whole, it comes back to that idea that in America, well, from what I've observed, I have great admiration for your country. You celebrate an idea that is America. Now, this is what happened in Rome, and that was my area in the Republic. I did all my work on that. Rome was an idea that was worth defending, fighting, putting up. I don't think Australia has had one. There is no idea of Australia. And people, no matter what you do, humans like to cling to something they can believe in, to be inspired by. I don't know what the other three my Aussie counterparts think, but that's just my view. And
No, that's what I've been saying this whole time. Like, we didn't get our rights through getting a war of independence. We got it through voting.
We didn't water the tree.
yeah.
And we didn't get out, and we didn't have to defend our rights against in a life or death situation. Like the UK had to defend their rights against Nazi Germany to an extent in World War II. So they do have a bit more of a gratefulness towards about their rights than we do. But the most we've had is against in Japan in 1941, 1942. But even then, Japan had no goals to take Australia. They were stopping at PNG, Papua New Guinea, and in Indonesia. They had no plans to take mainland Australia, nor do they have the manpower to maintain that army. So we've never really had a life or death situation here.
No, we haven't. Even with the British heritage, with all the, going back to the Middle Ages, even before, Germany, but it's way before. It's the nations that have had these rich historical fights or struggle. I mean, out of struggle comes great things, right? We haven't struggled, and I think Australia's had for too long this reputation. They're so laid back. We won the America's Cup way back then. She'll be right, mate. All this. I mean, look, none of us here clearly live by that, but a lot of Australians do, and we're up against it. And it's difficult.
We're kind of running into the same thing in Texas. The state of Texas was built on the shoulders of some really great men, and definitely in America we've got a very conquering spirit. Side note, back in the 50s, someone had written a book about back pain, and they were releasing it in both Canada and in America. It flopped in America until they changed the title. So the Canadian title was Coping with Back Pain. And when it came to America, they had to change the title to Conquering Back Pain because, that is... But
that's smart.
Yeah, several... this would have been 2 election cycles ago. Ted Cruz, who's a big Republican over here, he was running against a Democrat. And he also ran for president. Now I've forgotten his name.
Beto.
Anyway, yeah, Beto O'Rourke. Thank you, Beto O'Rourke. And it was a fairly narrow race by the time they finished. Ted Cruz beat him, and when they went back and looked at the numbers, at first they thought it would be all the Californians that were moving to Texas, and we had quite a few at that point that were. And they found out that the only reason Texas stayed red was because of these Californians that moved in, and the people that were voting blue were the children of native Texans, because we're a very wealthy state. We have a lot of any modern convenience you want, we've got it. And these kids who have grown up in relative luxury don't understand what it means to fight for something, to work for something.
Free college.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're the
right.
ones
No, exactly. So
it comes back to
I live in
that
Louisiana.
Of Sorry, Cedar. It comes back to that thing of adversity. If you don't have enough of it, you just become apathetic. And that, if you look back through history, it's always the same. Aristotle said it in 400 BC. If you want to know what's going to happen in 300 years, you look 300 years back. It's that same thing. People, even if you look at people in your own life, if they haven't had enough challenges to question, it's all cruisy. We have it in our own family. My husband's twin brother just doesn't care. He wants the government to take care of him. I'm a tinfoil hat wearer. He just wants if I get sick, the government will take me. I'll go to the doctors, he'll give me something else. As long as I can get in my 4-wheel drive and drive in the bush. Problem is, they're not going to let you do that anyway. So it's crazy. Listen, guys, I got to go. My daughter's just arrived. It's Father's Day here. So it's been such a pleasure to meet you all. I hope we can do this again soon, because I want to hear more. I just love your country. So I'll sign off. I'll let you guys continue, and hopefully see you again.
Hi, Gerrie.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's good having you here.
I'll have to look you up on Twitter.
Yeah, please do. I will.
Yeah.
Liberty's got all my details, so I'll talk.
Yeah, so I'll put when I post the actual videos, awesome. I'll put everyone's details in the description for it.
Excellent.
Oh, great. Thanks.
All right, great.
Talk
Perfect.
soon.
No problem.
Bye.
See you later.
So
bye.
I have one more question, then I gotta go. Big news! One of my favorite barbecue restaurants burned down a couple months ago. It's at the end of the street.
Great news.
Which one?
Hutchins BBQ. It was one of the top 50 in the world for barbecue. Anyway, I just found out they
Oh, wow.
So grand opening.
Good.
I'm showering and
That's
I'm
good.
running down to eat at my favorite barbecue place here. But one of the questions I do want to know is, what do you think what's the straw do you think that would break the camel's back?
There isn't one.
To do something. You don't think that it would go full Pol Pot?
I think that they could be putting people in camps. They'd other the people they put in camps, and they could literally execute us, and there'd be people denying that it would happen. Like, this country is so unbelievably apathetic that I think that the government could get away with pretty much anything.
When we had the protest a couple weekends ago,
let's say they start putting people who aren't white Australians in there. Well, then you'd probably have an issue. But that's, if it's mostly white Australians, I don't think people would care. Not to bring that sort of shit into it, but that's genuinely like that critical theory stuff has really hit Australia. It's getting pretty bad. Yeah.
When we had those protests a couple weeks ago, where the cops were using batons and rubber bullets and that sort of stuff, we had the establishment left was saying to us, there's no proof that they ever used rubber bullets or batons or capsicum spray or anything like that, and people were literally showing photos of the bruises on their body, and people still didn't believe it and I thought it was fake. That's the point we're at now.
It's North Korea. It's North Korea and China. Like, we're the third.
Yeah. We're becoming a second China.
Oh my goodness, y'all! I will have a house in Texas. You come on over, even if you sleep on the couch.
I wish I could. I really wish I could, honestly.
We all wish we could.
Yeah, get out as soon as you can.
But if they start categorizing us and they start trying to coerce, if they treat us differently because of this category and they try and coerce the vaccinations, then I'm pretty sure that's a free asylum claim to the US anyway. So
yeah,
because I would consider myself bordering on an anarchist, and my political ideology refuses coercion. So that sounds like political persecution to me.
Well, goodness, what's going on right now? Yeah, all I got. Yeah, I'd feed you some barbecue CD. It'd probably make you some etouffee or something. Well,
yeah, totally.
If I was to go, I think I'd be going to the Carolinas. But
beautiful. Yeah,
Texas is my second choice.
Carolinas have fire ants. Just watch out.
Yeah, but we're Aussies. We're used to that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You'd be like, oh, those are cute. Fantastic. I can't wait to hear the rest of it a little bit later, but I got a jet before everything closes down.
For sure.
So
yeah.
See ya. Thank you for that. Yeah.
So we do have a few questions from the chat. Unless CD has questions. Yeah, you go ahead.
I have a question. I have two, actually. So there are no rogue politicians at all that are like, hey, wait a minute. Like, there's no one pumping the brakes. Everyone's full speed ahead.
So we do have a couple. So I said before, we had Jackie Lambie, who's a senator from Tasmania. She was the one speaking out against the bills that were being passed about the minor parties. We've got Craig Kelly, is probably the most prominent figure. He's been anti-lockdown. He's gone from being in the Liberal National Party coalition in government to being independent in this year, and then he's now gone. But the problem is he's now joined Clive Palmer's party. Now, Clive Palmer is not very popular down here. He's our version of Trump if Trump wasn't in politics. But Clive Palmer used to be in Parliament. He's done some dodgy business dealings.
That's not a good comparison. Clive Palmer is an absolute fuckwit.
Yeah, he's done some
he's not a good politician in any way. Everything he does
Okay.
is for his own pocketbook. He's a piece
Yeah.
of shit. I contest
familiar.
this idea. I don't think there is any politicians that are actually doing anything. I think there are ones that genuinely care, but they get shut down almost immediately. They get removed from YouTube. I'm pretty sure. Who was the guy that stood up? I can't remember his name, but he was the video was doing the rounds on social media and it got removed. He was basically coming out straight against lockdowns and stuff. Do you remember that video?
Yes, I don't remember who the
I saw it.
I don't remember. I don't remember who it was, but he basically got slammed as a traitor because that's the language that people are using now.
That's the guy that both sides criticized, right?
It's a bit ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
We do have some okay MPs. There are 2 senators from the Victorian Upper House who are reasonable from the Liberal Democratic Party when they shut down the in the parks in Victoria, which you've now got to use. You've now got to scan a QR code to check in at those parks once they're reopened.
Forgot about that.
But these 2 MPs, David Limbrick and someone else, I'm sure Jack knows both their names because you're a Victorian.
The Liberal Democrats.
Yeah, it's Limbrick to someone else.
Okay. Yeah, Limbrick
and Quilty.
I'm not sure who the other one is.
So they did a protest on these steps of Parliament. Yeah, like they were there on chairs till late at night, protesting in the parks being closed. But of course they don't have the balance of power. So the upper house in Victoria is the Labor Party who doesn't have a majority in the upper house. They do control the lower house, but they don't have a majority in the upper house. But they've got people who are willing to work with them. The Greens probably work with them. Even a Libertarian called Fiona Patton from the Reason Party worked with them to shut down Parliament during COVID and support the lockdowns, that sort of stuff. So she's our version of think about Cato if Cato was a politician, basically.
Okay.
So
so my second question is, and I'm thinking. Okay.
Yeah, you
I was just wondering in case there was someone you could throw, attention, money, I don't know, just social media backing. I mean, I don't know how social media is going to even be a thing in Australia here within the next few weeks, since you're just going to be risking getting your shit taken, right? Like, I mean, they'll just come. I guess they can just come get your devices, which is insane.
Well, the thing is that,
but again, so I think that was what I was asking Liberty yesterday. Was like, okay, define computer. If you take the part of the computer out and you smash it with a hammer and you throw it out, and you give them the computer, the rest of it. I mean, you gave them your computer. You don't know what happened to that other piece, right?
Yeah,
but like with
basically.
the
I'm just saying. I mean,
allowing them to hack into your like social media. They wouldn't they also have to like figure out how they're going to do that? How they're going to hack into your device, into your
they go through the social media companies. The social media companies will comply because they always do.
Okay. Yeah, that's what in America. That's what Prism was. So that was it's basically Prism, basically.
Yeah.
So I've said this before, but the Identify and Disrupt Bill is basically the Patriot Act, but for Australia. And they're going to go even one level up. There was a recommendation put out by the Parliamentary Committee into Social Affairs and Legal Policy. Social policy or legal affairs, whatever, one of those two. But basically they said they did a report on domestic violence and family violence and sexual violence. And recommendation 30 of that report from March basically said that what the government should do is require everyone to present 100 points of ID to use social media and to regulate social media and make sure that there's more access to it by the government. And if you don't give details in code about your social media, you can get arrested and that sort of stuff. And
social credit,
so the ID system is basically like your driver's license is worth X number of points, passport is X number of points, and you've got to show enough ID to reach that 100-point total before you can use social media. So that was from March, April. That hasn't been put forward in a bill yet, as far as I know, but that was being considered by the federal government, basically. So that's the point
Who
we're
exactly?
at now.
Like, who proposed it?
Okay.
It was the
Okay.
the committee was bipartisan.
Okay.
So both parties
Okay.
supported that.
Wow.
No.
Wow. Okay, that puts it in perspective. My other question, because I'm an American, and this logic is foreign to me, even with the woke culture in America. That is still foreign. It's very foreign to me. So I look at other British colonies, sure, victims of their imperialism.
That'll work.
Whatever you want to call it. And I think it's interesting to look at all the other ones, us, India, and a few others, and you guys, and the rest of us revolted, right? Like the rest of us said absolutely not. And Australia, like you said, just kind of like always was under. Yeah, you were the prison, but you were also reliant upon them for everything. Right? Like, I mean, like the entire continent was like reliant upon them. And so it's just bred this culture of like, the government's just going to take care of us because they have since the inception of this place.
It's the same in New Zealand.
So
also islands as well. So it's just a general culture in this area right now. Canada,
which is interesting.
Extent, but it is basically every important colony from the UK, so Canada, us, New Zealand, and I think South Africa have all gone very much the same route because we all want peaceful independence, unlike the USA. I remember in the 1930s, the UK government was being pushed by Canada and South Africa. I think it was those two, to pass the Statute of Westminster, which basically meant that the UK could no longer, write laws for us and control foreign policy and that sort of stuff. Australia didn't sign that until 1942. And the only reason we signed it was because our Navy was given over to the control of the UK Navy because we were at war with Germany because we're part of the Commonwealth. And we didn't have the death penalty. The UK did. And two sailors from the Australian Navy, who were then serving under the UK's Navy, were given a death sentence. So then the Australian government decided to pass the Statute of Westminster in 1942 and backdate it to September 3rd, 1939, which is when war was declared. But yes, that's the point we're at. Like, there's a long history of this. People, just they're happy to, with the status quo basically until something urgent happens. But even now, like we're not even though we have like major problems right now with COVID, people still don't even care. And so, like, at what point are we going to have that Statute of Westminster moment and have people realize we need to take back our freedoms? That's the question I want to know. And right now, it doesn't look like we're going to have that for a fair while at least, because people are still happy with it and they want it to go further and that sort of stuff. At least in Queensland, there's a bit more of an uproar because they're building the quarantine camp right beside Toowoomba, where I am, the second biggest inland city behind only Canberra, the national capital. It's a LNP stronghold, whereas the government of Queensland is Labor, a version of Democrats. And that Labor has no chance of flipping this area at the federal election. So what they did instead is they built the camp here. This means that people here have to comply with restrictions because right now we haven't had COVID since June last year, so no one here follows restrictions, which the government and media are unhappy about. And at the same time, it means that the government can get votes from marginal seats on the coast because they aren't at risk. They're getting safety without suffering anything. So the local council wasn't consulted. None of the 3 state MPs were consulted, and the federal MP was not consulted. So no one was spoken to. No one in Toowoomba is happy with it that I've spoken to. None of the government members were happy with it, and they just said, you guys can have this quarantine camp. And then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, then praised it on Twitter for not building it in a metro place, even though it's built right beside the second biggest inland city, and we don't have the infrastructure. So our public hospital is full, we've got 2 private hospitals as well, but the public hospital is full with a waiting list. So we don't have the infrastructure to support this where we are because the government won't give us the money to build anything, which we need. To, if we're going to have a government, they should at least fund us properly, to fund the healthcare system properly. But instead, they decided to, have the Olympic Games and the Commonwealth Games here in the space of 14 years in Brisbane and the Gold Coast. So much, like billions of dollars is going to go into infrastructure in that southeast pocket. The rest of the state's paying for it, and we get no benefit. At the same time, the Premier has closed the border because how she's done the quarantine is, if you come over the border, you've got to quarantine in hotels and the like. You can't quarantine at home except when you've got compassionate grounds. So the hotel quarantine, we were told, was full. So the border was closed for 14 days. So Queenslanders couldn't get back into the state. Then a couple of days later, she said, we're going to let in the wives, girlfriends, and children of over 100 football players into the state. So you're looking at like 400 or 500 people led to the state because their families are football players. So all the football has been moved, and all the sports have been moved into Queensland mostly, and Western Australia as well, but mostly Queensland. All the East Coast sports have been moved from Victoria and the ACT and New South Wales up into Queensland. It's the whole thing of, and Gerrie would appreciate this if she was here. Bread and circuses. Which is a Roman quote. If the government gives the people their bread and their circuses, they're going to comply with whatever happens. So we still have beer, we still have sport, which are two big parts of Australian culture. So people, as long as they're getting that,
beer in Victoria.
At least in Queensland, people are starting to wake up. But down south, where it's worse, where the itinerary is worse, people there are still happy with it. But yeah, as Jack was just saying, in Victoria, the Dan Andrews, the state premier, said, you can't drink beer with a mask on.
He's losing his mind. He's losing his shit. Daniel Andrews is losing his shit. He's literally coming out and he's directly targeting legislation that he just makes up out of nowhere at people who have specifically slighted him. So this bit of legislation came out because there were people in Victoria who were working around the closure of bars. So basically, a bar would open up the outside area. You would come in, you would pay, you get your beer, you walk off. Right? Sounds like a good alternate to having lockdown to maintain the bars being open and whatnot. So what does Daniel Andrews do? He comes out and specifically bans the wearing of masks to drink alcohol. It's very specific. No other drink. You can take your mask off to drink a soft drink, to drink some water. No worries. Alcohol, though, not allowed to do that. Not allowed to take your mask off to drink you just got a bit of alcohol. Yeah, basically. So this fucking guy comes out losing his goddamn mind, right? Specifically targeting legislation at certain people. There was another thing.
He's got a cult basically around him now. I have likened it to the MAGA cult. People will literally go in his tweets.
Yeah, it's that bad.
Hashtag I stand with Dan.
I've started using that hashtag next to the hashtag fuck Dan Andrews, just so it shows up in their feed, right?
Yes.
So that they start getting
That's
other information
into their
into their echo chambers, because people need to see this. This is how you break echo chambers, and this is what I do on Twitter, because I broke down a whole lot of things about this thing on Twitter.
I started Twitter.
That's probably a smart idea.
Yeah, I think so.
Let me just find it.
What were some of the questions from the chat, Liberty?
I've got a few here. So I'll pull them up. One of them that I saw recently was, if I can try and find it and scroll through the chat. I've been answering a few questions as we go. Just you guys have been talking. But one of the questions that we have right now is, how do we? So I'll pull it up now so everyone can see it. So, how do we wake up the people? How do you get people to stop being such toxic mouthpieces and think for themselves? Does anyone have any thoughts on that, Jack, Quokka? How do we wake people up?
Put it to them in simple terms.
Yeah,
simple terms.
you can't be too complex, or else they're just gonna ignore you. You know, like
Mhm.
you gotta like
Yep.
hit them with surface level knowledge, or else if you hit them with like all the deep stuff, they're not gonna take you seriously.
You have to show them stuff that's easily looked up. So
Yeah.
one of my favorite things to show people is the hotel quarantine thing. So in Victoria, a lot of people blame the federal government for what happened, all the deaths and stuff, which doesn't make sense because it was Daniel Andrews, his policy failures that resulted in the hotel quarantine failing, which resulted in people getting cases out into Richmond, which is right in the middle of the city, which then led on to 750 deaths, 90% of the deaths at the time. It was 70% of cases, 90% of deaths at the time. So this whole thing, I did a whole thing on this. They basically, not one person in the Andrews government knows who hired the security. The security guards, the security company, the one that got most of the job, was not on the preferred list. So Wilson and I think it was MSS were on the list, but the third one, which the name escapes me right now, was not. They had 4 permanent staff, and then as a result had to outsource the rest of the staff. This staff, obviously not caring, started having, I guess, sexual relations with the people in the hotel quarantine, started letting them out, started letting them interact with each other. This got out. It got out. It led to getting into the nursing homes, which there's plenty of argument there to blame the federal government for not having a plan for this to occur. Think of this like New York, what happened in New York, right? Where Cuomo put sick people in nursing homes. That's basically what they think happened. So they basically think that the federal government put sick people into nursing homes, which is not what happened. So basically, a nurse contracted it and went to work, and it spread through nursing homes, and I think it ended up killing, 60% of all the people that died during this time. So people like to blame the federal government for this, but I've found multiple different things of Daniel Andrews saying that it was his choice to have hotel quarantine here, his choice to deal with it the way that he dealt with it. The federal government also offered federal help, military, to come look after the hotel quarantines, rejected by Daniel Andrews 3 times over 5 days. So, and then I'm sure you guys probably heard about this, that he denied having ever gotten offered support from the federal government. He denied it openly in a federal investigation into the hotel quarantine. He said that he never got support, but there are logs showing that there are three separate instances where the federal government offered federal support. He eventually buckled. He eventually admitted that he was at fault, and still his supporters think that he's not at fault. So this is the best way that I get people, is I show them the receipts for the hotel quarantine stuff up, right? And people complain about New South Wales right now, and they complain because it's not Labor. That's why they complain about New South Wales, because everyone's suspiciously quiet about Victoria, but nobody talks everybody talks about New South Wales because it's easy to attack the right wing. And I could care less, right? Fuck them both. They're both horrendous leaders. They're both horrendous governments. The federal government, as far as I'm concerned, is illegitimate. As far as I'm concerned, Scott Morrison has resigned. He has been so out of the picture that, as far as I'm concerned, he's illegitimate.
He hasn't done much, has he?
No, and he's done absolutely nothing. He's stayed out of the limelight. He dodges questions. As far as I'm concerned, he's resigned his position. As far as I'm concerned, we have no prime minister.
We basically have 8 countries. Each state and territory operates independently right now, basically. That's how it's working. He says, live with COVID, but the popular Labor leaders of Western Australia, Victoria, and Queensland are saying, no, COVID 0. And then their supporters agree with them. And so, yeah, that's the point we're at right now. And now he's finally caved, and he's supporting vaccine mandates to some extent. He refused to support the quarantine camp being built near Toowoomba. And then the next day said, you know, we're going to be at our own camp in Brisbane on Army ground. So there are now 2 camps in Queensland. One federal, one state.
So they're basically building concentration camps, aren't they?
Well, they're going to use Birmingham, the federal finance minister. I think it's federal finance minister, but he said that basically we're going to use these camps after COVID for national disaster relief and emergencies like that. So they've admitted that they're going to stay around.
But we know that's probably not true. They're probably going to use it now.
Oh, these camps are not going to be used just for quarantine. They're going to put all undesirables that have never committed a crime in that, and that's exactly what they're going to do.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. They're
and it's going to be cheered on by the people as well.
That's the sad part, isn't it?
Mm.
Well, I mean, the thing is like a certain country in Western Europe in the 1930s, those people cheered too, until at the end of a certain war, and then they were paraded through what they were cheering for, and then they're all crying and sobbing, and they can't believe this happened, but the whole time they didn't necessarily know exactly.
Well,
but they knew they had some idea these people are just disappearing.
The same fervor, every single documentary I've watched that shows actual footage from World War II, from pre-World War II Germany, it's the same fervor. It's the same fervor that Hitler generated through his hatred of the Jews. It's exactly the same thing, except it's no longer a race. It's vaccinated, unvaccinated, and
exactly.
I'm not against the vaccine. I could care less what you do. If you want the vaccine, go and get it. Right? I refuse to be coerced. And even if I did get it, I would lose my card because I refuse. Right? Even if I did go and get it, I would lose it out of principle because I refuse to be coerced, and I refuse to have other people be coerced.
Yep.
That's a good point.
I'm going to go catch the end of this football game. This has been awesome. I hope we can begin.
No worries.
America is with you. There are those, the little guys. We are behind you. And if we could, I know several of us, if we could, helicopter you guys one by one out of there, we would in a heartbeat. Heartbeat. So
yes, please do.
I know. We have some extra, Blackhawks they use. And they a few of them actually. So
you could probably buy them from the Taliban.
But you guys hang in there. I was gonna say that I don't know where we're at. I don't know what we're allowed to say and we're not say, but yeah.
I'm gonna put myself in for the green card lottery because we're underrepresented.
Whatever. Yes. I know some chicks. You need to get married. You know what I mean? Like I know some people that would be more than happy to marry you to get you out of there.
Yeah, I saw someone say that in chat.
Wouldn't be opposed.
Yeah, but y'all just hang in there. I'm CD McRae. I'm Lady ANCAP on Twitter. And I'm all for Australia, man. I'm with you guys. And
thank you.
Let us know what we can do. We're here. Absolutely, y'all. Take care, okay?
Thank you.
Will do.
All right. Thank you for being here.
All right.
There we go. I also had a question. Do you two think that would be in a better state of affairs if we were like the US and we had multiple states, like way more states than we have now?
No.
No?
Not really, no.
The ultimate goal for us should be complete decentralization. Local government should get more power than any other government.
That's
because if local governments have the power to control what money is spent in the local area, then we won't get money hoarded in these rich areas, and we can actually help people out. Also, having decentralized networks is ultimately a better goal.
Yeah.
We've got a couple more questions from the chat. I think we'll finish up after we go through those questions. So I've got one question here from someone asking, how do the people who aren't in Australia help Australians who want to leave?
Send money. Send 3D printers.
Yeah. No,
although not to Quokka though, because you can't even have the blueprints to 3D print firearms if you're in New South Wales.
Yeah, that's illegal, isn't it? You can't even have the blueprints.
That's fine. They say that I can't have the manifesto of the New Zealand shooter either, but may or may not have that.
Fair enough.
Any closing thoughts from you two before we finish up?
Oh, we're fucked.
No, we still have hope, I think. We'll see.
No worries. Well, I think we'll finish up here. You can find... Sorry?
Are there any questions?
I can't see any more. I think I've answered all the questions that I saw. Anyway, I think we'll finish up here. Thanks, guys, for tuning into our first podcast live stream. We've had some computer problems along the way, but, we made it. We are recording our first show tomorrow, so that'll be myself and a few others are recording episode 1. Tomorrow, hopefully, we should be out within a week from tomorrow, which is Monday for Australians. So stay tuned for that. That'll be released on the Gumtree of Liberty podcast, YouTube channel, and all podcatchers, I think. And we should be looking at a few pieces of legislation that have been passed recently, if I remember correctly. Anyway, thanks everyone, and have the rest of your day.
Thank you too.